Hi everyone, welcome to the overview of NURS 4527. This is your practicum part of your integrated practicum. It's for September 2022. This is where the course e-class site is going to be. It's going to be a combination of both 4527 and 4528 will be on both one e-class site, and both sections will actually use the same site. The course directors are Professor Irfan Aslam, which is Section A, and Section B is my section, which will be Professor Sandra Peniston, and our email addresses are here. So this course is made up of 432 hours. 412 of the 432 will be your practicum experience hours, and the remaining 20 practicum experience hours are for on-site clinical preparation when you come on to York and for preparation at your agency. It's very, very important to remember that students must successfully complete both 4527 and 4528 to be recognized as a passing grade or credit in both courses in the semester. So really important. So this is the final term, as you know, and it encompasses 2 courses. And the aim of this experience is to integrate your practicum or your practice knowledge and your theory. These courses are presented and enacted concurrently. And so it provides an opportunity for a culminating intensive nursing practice experience. And you're going to be integrating learning from all your nursing courses to engage in deliberate praxis guided by a nursing theory of your choosing. These are your course learning outcomes that you must meet. So you have to demonstrate accountability to the public by practice in accordance with the CNO standards of practice and the current entry-level competencies for registered nurses of Ontario. Enhance the health and healing in individuals, families, groups, or communities through synthesizing your knowledge. Demonstrate praxis in incorporating multiple ways of knowing, evidence-informed care. Exemplify personal and professional growth through application of skills for lifelong learning. Establish and maintain collaborative relationships with nursing colleagues, interprofessional team. Demonstrate leadership for the advancement of nursing professional areas of practice. Advocate and support healthy organizational and public policy, and promote culturally sensitive nursing care that honors human dignity, diversity, and different ways of being. This course links to all of the CNO entry to practice competencies, and you must meet all these entry to practice competencies in order to pass this course. And the links to the NCLEX RN categories and subcategories are here. And again, it links to all of the NCLEX RN categories and subcategories. With respect to course readings and textbooks, all of your course textbooks are going to be useful in this course and will support your learning. These are the technical requirements for any course requiring any type of e-class learning. This course will not be using any type of proctoring or online examination. These are other useful links to describe any other resources for computing information, and resources available for NCLEX RN can be found on the CNO website at this link right here. These are recommended websites to support this course, from the CNA to the College of Nurses of Ontario to RNAO. And please review the expectations and all for the requisite skills and abilities for registered nursing practice in order to become a registered nurse. So these are the skills and abilities that are required. Again, the course e-class site will be used. It will be a combination of both 4527 and 4528, and it will be for sections both A and B, so one e-class site. So the relationship that you're going to have in your integrated practicum is going to consist of 2 key individuals. So obviously yourself, but the 2 key individuals are you're going to have a preceptor that will be your day-to-day preceptor that you'll have in your clinical site, and your contact person at York for clinical placement will be your CCD, your clinical course director, and they will be assigned to you at the beginning of the course. And so they will be responsible for supporting you in your 11 to 12 weeks during your midterm and final evaluations. You'll be submitting your learning plans to this individual, but you will have a preceptor who will be your person on site, and your CCD may or may not come on site to do your final evaluations. They may be done in person or they may be done virtually. The course director, Irfan and myself, are the individuals that are running the entire course. Any communication about your clinical site should first go to your CCD, and if required, it will then come to your course director. So when you meet your preceptor for the first time, there's a couple things you need to do. Number one is you need to obtain your preceptor's preferred method of contact. You need to, number two, input this information onto accountability record number 1 and upload it to eClass. You will find accountability record number 1 on eClass. As well, you need to provide the preceptor with the Preceptor Handbook and the Preceptor Welcome Letter. And that's going to include your CD information and your CD contact information. So those are the requirements when you first meet with your preceptor. Now, practicum during the pandemic, we're in the final stages of our pandemic. Hopefully we'll not have another wave. But if you become symptomatic, we still advise you to complete the YU screen and self-isolate immediately. The YU screen failure will lead to a coordinator from York University reaching out to you to provide you with more guidance. Do not access campus or attend your clinical practice until you have received clearance from York. In addition, this is very, very important. You need to consult with your agency representative. And so this is going to be your preceptor who will direct you to the Occupational Health and Safety Unit at your agency placement site to find out what their requirements are for you to come back on the unit. And so this is saying, this wording is here is for if you're feeling unwell at clinical, if you should remain on the unit or you should go home. Again, the agency representative will guide you, but if you're at home and you're feeling unwell, again, you will contact your preceptor, contact the agency representative to find out if you need to isolate, for how long, if you need to get a COVID test. And so really important, those two contacts. If you are leaving the agency or if you're at home ill, again, notify your preceptor and your CCD. Communication with the preceptor and CCD. So the student should ensure timely, appropriate, and thorough communication with the preceptor and CCD in ways that support professional practice and teamwork. Seek guidance from your preceptors and CCDs with respect to clinical practice issues. Initiate discussions with the preceptor and the CCD about their preferred method of communication. So you want to reach out to your CCD as well, and the CCD will have initial meetings with you to let them know how you should contact them with respect to if there's an incident at practicum or if you've had an injury at practicum. So you need to reach out to both your preceptor and your CCD to get their preferred methods of communication. You need to consult with your preceptor and CCD as to their preferred method of site visit. And so that may be conducted via email, phone, or in person. And communicate professionally. So unprofessional communication will be discussed, and a progression plan may be initiated by the CCD if there's any form of unprofessional communication. So let's look at clinical practicum hours and expectations. And so students must work the same shifts, both date and time, as the assigned preceptor. Students at risk for non-completion of hours, if you think that your hours are going to be short, you must contact your CCD as soon as a concern arises that your hours may not be met, because at that time we may recommend a secondary preceptor. If for some reason maybe your original preceptor's off sick for a certain reason, that we can recommend a secondary preceptor. And that's what the next point is. If the primary preceptor is off sick or otherwise unavailable, the student may be paired with a designated secondary RN preceptor working on the same unit. But that needs to be, that decision needs to be made in consultation with the agency representative. If the secondary preceptor is not available, then the student must go home and contact the CCD. So if you arrive at your clinical placement site and your primary preceptor is not there and the secondary preceptor is not available, then you need to contact your CCD, and most likely you'll be sent home and no hours will be counted in this situation. So you will need to make up this clinical shift. All scheduled shifts and subsequent changes must be communicated to the CCD as soon as they are organized. If the CCD is not informed of the shift or a change in shift, the shift will not count towards clinical hours. So this is all just saying that the CCD needs to be aware at all times when you're on the unit, who you're working with, if it's not your primary preceptor. If your preceptor has changed their shifts and you're going in on a different shift, then the CCD needs to know. Here's your clinical practice hours. A 12-hour shift, you will count 12 hours. An 8-hour shift, you will count 8 hours. Agency orientation, it's going to vary between organizations. If it's held in the first week, we're already giving you 20 hours to go towards this. If it's held after the first week, contact your CCD to discuss hours credit. We may give you a few credit hours if it's over and above the 20 hours that were already allotted to you. You're not allowed to do any overtime, and we don't want you doing any more than 84 hours in 2 weeks, and that is 7 shifts in 2 weeks. So typically what that looks like is you will do 4 hours in 1 week, 4 shifts in 1 week, 3 hours the next week, but a maximum of 48 hours per week. But no more than 84 in 2 weeks. So you're not going to be doing 48 hours each week. You may do 48 hours 1 week, and then the next week you'll be doing 36, and that's going to equal your 84 hours. We don't expect you to be doing 48 hours per week. This is a maximum. One of your weeks will probably be a maximum of 48 hours, but it will not be every week because you're only allowed to do 84 hours in 2 weeks. If you're working 8-hour shifts, you'll be doing 40 hours per week for those doing 8-hour shifts. Scheduling a clinical placement is not allowed on statutory holidays. So do not book in on statutory holidays because the CCDs are not available on statutory holidays. Please consult with your CCD for any questions regarding coverage during summer reading week, and also just to confirm that you're not doing any shifts on the statutory holidays. You will see a time log document which will be on eClass. This time log needs to be signed by the preceptor, and it's strongly suggested that the preceptor signs off the log weekly. The last day for clinical practice completion is Sunday, August the 7th. This can be a night shift. If it is a night shift, it must end by 7:30 the next morning on Monday. There's no day shifts allowed on Monday. Students must sign client and agency documents legibly, including the full name and York nursing student status. I've already indicated that you will be giving the Preceptor Handbook to your preceptor. You will be giving that to the preceptor on the first shift, and hopefully in advance of the first shift if possible. You can email it to them. These are your evidences of evaluation for 4527. Again, your clinical preparedness permit or your CPP must be available and ready to go prior to clinical placement, or you will not be allowed to start clinical placement. May 9th will be your course orientation. Now, it's self-directed because you're already watching these two videos on 4527 and 4528. We will not be reviewing these, but we will be having a question and answer session on May 9th at 11:30, and we will send out a Zoom link for that. Your on-campus clinical sessions will be held in person, and the dates will be May 10th, 11th, and 13th, and you will be signing up for only one of these dates, and the on-campus clinical sessions will run for 6 hours from 8:30 to 14:30. At the beginning of your on-campus clinical day at 8:30, you will be writing the medication calculation quiz, which will be 30 minutes, and you need to receive 100% to pass it, and you will receive remediation if less than 100%. At the end of week 2, and after you've spoken to your CCD, you will be submitting the learning plan draft, and then by the end of, this should be end of week 3. End of week 3, you will be submitting the final learning plan. Accountability record number 1 will be found on eClass, and it will be looking at the contact information for your preceptor, and you will do that on your first encounter with your preceptor or on your first shift. Accountability document number 2 will be a record indicating the date of your first triad meeting. So your first triad meeting will be with your CCD and your preceptor. And again, your CCD will guide you on this. And then date of final evaluation will comprise accountability document number 3. So please find these accountability documents on eClass and be ready to complete them and submit them on time. Week 6 and at week 11, you will be submitting your time log document, which again does require your preceptor signatures for each shift. Your clinical midterms will take place around week 6 and around week 12 at the discretion of your CCD. And then in week 12, you will also be submitting your portfolio. So all items in 4527 are indicated as a pass-fail, and they will be reflected in your midterm and final evaluations. Again, you must complete 4527 and 4528 concurrently in order to recognize as a credit in either course. Just a little bit of information about the requirements. So your med calculation, again, you must receive 100% on it. It is going to be written prior to starting practicum. You can use a non-programmable, non-communicating calculator may be used when writing the test. When successful, students can proceed to organize shifts with your preceptor. If unsuccessful, you must attend a referral session and rewrite the test, and may not be able to begin clinical placement until successful. I've already talked to you about the course orientation by Zoom. There's 2 asynchronous recordings, one of which you're listening to right now. And then we will be holding again on May 9th a question and answer Zoom session. Your learning plan is a pass-fail, and you will see this at the end of this course outline. It's Appendix A, and the learning plan you will be completing in the first 2 weeks of your practicum, and your CCD will guide you as to the requirements for this learning plan. But you're going to be developing 3 learning goals, and it's going to be based on the 9 categories from the CNO conceptual framework. Your accountability documents I've already discussed. There are 3 of them. The first one is the student and preceptor information. The second one is the learning plan and the first CCD meeting. And the third one is the final evaluation and the CCD meeting. And the time log I've discussed. So you're going to be keeping a running log of your shifts, and they are to be signed off at the end of every week, a minimum of weekly, by your preceptor. Clinical evaluations, there will be 2. There will be a midterm evaluation around week 6, and then a final evaluation around week 12. You will see the Practicum Evaluation tool in Appendix A, and that is where you will be submitting or completing the information. So you will write your own comments, the CCD will write their comments as well as your preceptor, and then the CCD will finally sign it off at the end. It's important to note that the Practicum Evaluation tool here, it must be submitted at least 3 days ahead of a scheduled meeting with the CCD and the preceptor. So it's your responsibility to make sure it's completed by the preceptor and yourself. Students must ensure that the Practicum Evaluation tool is scanned and uploaded to the course eClass website prior to the scheduled meeting. Again, your CCD will guide you in this. The student portfolio is the last thing you will submit. It showcases your work and achievements, and you will find the portfolio evaluation criteria on eClass. So for this course, you're going to see either a credit or no credit will appear on your transcript. There's not going to be a letter grade or a percentage. The last date to drop a course without receiving a grade is July 8th, but you must meet with the undergraduate program director before you are dropping a course. Involuntary withdrawal is defined as failure in the practicum course prior to completion of the course. And this is, you may be asked to withdraw involuntary from a course or a practicum component if you, the student, fail to meet the requirements of the course practicum component, or if a practicum progression plan is in place to meet the progression plan. And so this will be communicated to you, and it has oftentimes to do with unsatisfactory attendance at the placement site. You're not following through and meeting course competencies at the practicum site. You've had some unprofessional or unsafe behavior where you may be asked to withdraw from the course. And this is the document that you can look at with respect to involuntary withdrawal. So just a little bit about professional conduct and moving through the course. Check the eClass announcements regularly. So really important. Check your email count regularly. Make sure you've read and understood the undergraduate supplemental calendar, the academic integrity model and academic honesty. And then grading for assignments. Again, the grading for assignments are a pass-fail. And so we won't be using the YorkU grading system, but so this is just something that's left in all course outlines. Admission submission, so make sure that you are submitting your assignments on time. This is the lateness penalty. Again, we will not be using this deduction method. And so you will be working with your CCDs. If your assignments are late, you may be put on a progression plan. This is other important course information for students. And then at the end, you will see the Appendix A. Just stopping there to make it a little bit bigger. So Appendix A is at the end of the course outline, and this is your Practicum Evaluation tool. So it consists of two parts. Part A is where you will be doing your learning plan, and Part B consists of the evaluation, which is your midterm and final evaluation. So moving through, this is where you will be completing your learning plan. So you have 3 goals here. Activities to achieve the goals, resources and supports, how you know you will be successful, and your target date. And again, you will be submitting this to the CCD so you can work with the CCD and they can answer any questions that you might have. The second part is Part B, and this is your Practicum Evaluation. And this is where you will be doing your midterm evaluation and your final evaluation. You can see that it follows the C&O Enter to Practice competencies. as well as the course learning outcomes. So again, you must meet all the course learning outcomes as well as all the entry to practice competencies. And so you will see here, you either be marked as a pass or a fail. There's a spot here for student comments, and then a spot here for preceptor and CCD comments. And as I go through this, you will see, again, another course outcome, the CNO entry to practice competencies, and it's the same all the way through. So you will be completing this at midterm and final evaluation. At your midterm evaluation and the final evaluation, there will just be a summary of the strengths identified by you, the preceptor CCD strengths, areas where you need to improve on here, and again, the same with the final evaluation. And then any final comments, it will be signed off by you at the end. It will be signed off by the student and the clinical course director, and then eventually it will be signed off by me, and then this will be kept on your file at York University. So I wanted to review a very important part of this course outline, and it looks at what you can and cannot do in clinical practice, but more specifically what you cannot do. And so nursing students may not initiate, delegate, or accept delegation of a controlled act. And you know your controlled acts. And if you don't, please go back and review your controlled acts. So as a general rule, nursing students may not perform any procedure or activity that has been designated as a delegated controlled act, an advanced nursing skill, or a special procedure, which requires education or certification. However, exceptions to this rule can be explored depending on the student's knowledge base and learning objectives, the frequency with which this skill is required in the clinical area. So certain clinical areas require certain advanced nursing skills or maybe a special procedure. The agency's policy. Does it allow nursing students to do an advanced nursing skill or special procedure? And anything that could cause potential risk to the client. Nursing students may perform controlled acts under supervision. The students will participate and be successful in agency-specific education and training first. The supervision may be direct or indirect based on the student's demonstrated skill and competency. The supervision may be provided by the preceptor or the buddy nurse. It has to be a registered nurse and someone who works in the clinical area where the student requires direct supervision. So these are some of the examples. A student completes the agency IV course and the student under direct supervision may start IVs. The student completes the agency glucometer session. The student is certified to conduct capillary blood glucose readings and conducts readings under direct supervision. And so these are some of the areas that students may perform if they have gone through the proper training. Flushing a saline lock, venipuncture, initiating an intravenous catheter, capillary blood glucose readings, drawing blood from an arterial line, and vaginal exam. Procedures not to be performed by students. The following procedures or acts are not within the nursing scope of practice. Witnessing a consent for procedures or other legal documentation, accepting a verbal or telephone order from a doctor or nurse practitioner, accept responsibility for carrying the narcotic keys or use the narcotic cupboard code independently, be in charge of the nursing unit, perform any sanctioned medical acts, and any agency practice that according to the policy manual are not to be performed by nursing students. In addition, students are not to care for ventilated patients, add anything into the infusing IV tubing below the drip chamber, administer analgesia or a top-up for continuous epidural analgesia, removal of an epidural catheter, procedures in connection with all dialysis, removal of chest tubes, insertion, repositioning, or removal of a pulmonary artery line or a Swan-Ganz catheter, central venous lines, and IV direct push medication such as Lasix, sedation, etc. And so, in addition to these guidelines, the student is expected to be familiar with and follow all the agency's policies and procedures and any additional guidelines established by the individual units of the agency. If a discrepancy should arise between the agency's policies and these guidelines, the preceptor and student should arrange to meet with the appropriate agency or personnel and involve the CCD if needed in order to resolve the issue in a manner which will ensure client safety. The last thing is in order to ensure maximum safety for clients and students, the following guidelines are recommended. So where it requires the signature of 2 registered nurses, and typically you'll see this for certain medications, the student does not count as one of them. Therefore, 2 other signatures in addition to the students are required. The registered nurse will co-sign the narcotic record sheet when a student removes any narcotic from the locked drawer, and students will follow agency policies regarding narcotic administration. Any required calculation for fractional dosage is to be checked by the preceptor or a registered nurse. Again, students must follow the agency's policy manual. Students are not to administer the following: IV heparin, IV insulin, IV digoxin, narcotics wasted, and narcotics through IV infusion. Initiate chemotherapy, initiate blood and blood product infusion. You can help set it up. You can do the check. You can learn how to do the check, but you can't be the second signature. But you can go through the process of how to do it. Any IV medications or any medications identified by the agency, and the student is to check the policy. So in the end, if it's not a basic nursing school, please reach out to your CCD, whether you're allowed to do it. Speak with your preceptor and the clinical educator to ensure that there's not any additional training or any policy that states that you are not allowed to do specific advanced nursing procedures. But specifically the ones that are outlined is that I've said that you are not allowed to perform because of knowledge, skill, and judgment.